Call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Monday, January 24th, 2022. And I will ask Dave to call the roll, please.
Council President Abbas is absent. Alder Carter.
Present.
Alder Verveer. Alder Furman.
Present.
Alder Figueroa Cole.
Present.
Alder Curry.
Here.
Mayor, you have quorum.
Thank you. Our first item is general public comment. We have no registrants. So we'll move on to disclosures and recusals. Are there any disclosures or recusals on today's agenda from any members of the body? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. My only note on the consent agenda is you received an email from Christine as well, which is the recommended action on item number 8 is to refer to the 3/21 council meeting. Are there other notes or requests for exclusions from the consent agenda? Alder Furman.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like item number 20 pulled, please.
Number 20 will be excluded from the consent agenda. Are there other items that alders would like to have excluded from the consent agenda at this time? Alder Carter? Alder Carter, you're muted if you're talking.
I just want a clarification on 13.
All right. So items 13 and 20. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Yes, I am. Sorry, I'm looking for it. I just want also a quick clarification.
Oh, sorry, Alder Figueroa Cole. That was my fault. Go ahead.
18, please.
On number 18.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then, Mayor, I have
Yes,
one
Alder
more.
Carter. Sorry.
Number 14, I'm sorry.
Number 14 as well. All right. Any additional items for exclusion from the consent agenda? All right, so at this point then, items to be excluded from the consent agenda are 13, 14, 18, and 20. And a note that the action on number 8 is to refer to the 3/21 Finance Committee meeting. Alder Carter, would you make a motion to that effect, please?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you, Alder Verveer. Consent agenda is moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote and we can excuse any staff whose items just passed on the consent agenda. And we'll go to item 13, which is Legistar 69002, authorizing agreements with Van Gelder Bus Company and Lamers Bus Lines to help defray maintenance at Dutch Mill Park and Ride. Let's start, Alder Carter, with a motion, please, to adopt.
Move to adopt number 13.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alder Verveer. Alder Carter, questions for staff?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Is this agreement a new agreement, or is this a reoccurring, not January 22, but has this been an agreement with these two bus lines for a long time, or is this something new?
Yeah.
I can answer that. Yeah, this is a renewal to contracts that had expired previously, and so this is just updating those contracts with these two members. We also have one other bus company that has already renewed their contract with us. So this is just catching up the other two that we haven't had updated recently.
And are there any improvements on the horizon for the Dutch mill?
That I don't know. I believe that would
Okay.
be traffic engineering, possibly.
Okay, thank you. I'll contact them offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Carter. Any other questions on item 13? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote and come to item 14, which is Legistar 68965, authorizing third-party agreements with neighboring jurisdictions for funding, etc., of the East-West Bus Rapid Transit Project. Alder Carter, a motion, please.
Move to adopt number
Second.
14.
Moved and seconded to adopt. Alder Carter, you had questions?
I have a question. Is this, I see that there's several jurisdictions going from the east to west. Will there be additional jurisdictions when you do north to south? Like Oregon, maybe?
I can take that one. So most likely, yes. We would the north-south envisioned would go into Fitchburg, and so we would expect some agreement with them at that point. But that the only other one that I'm aware of that isn't already covered by this agreement. I don't think that there would be any other jurisdictions on the north side, at least as far as the original project is envisioned. At some point, extensions to Oregon or Wanakee may be in the cards, but I don't think that would be in an initial phase.
Okay, thank you.
And Justin, I think that we would anticipate trying to get regular bus service to some of those jurisdictions before rapid transit would be my guess, Alder.
Okay, great.
And
Thank you for
I
the
have
clarity.
had some conversations with some of the executives in these places. So we're working on expanding the Metro Empire.
I'm sure you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions on item 14? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. And that will take us to item 18, which is Legistar 69335, amending the traffic engineering capital budget to include funding for traffic signal installation at Henry and West Wash. Can I get a motion on this one, please?
Move to adopt item 18.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt. Alder Figueroa Cole, questions?
So the attachments on that file contain a list of priorities. And I'm just wondering, were those priorities already completed? Or how did we select this one first?
Looks like we've got Graham from TE here.
Yes. Good afternoon. Graham Heights from Traffic Engineering. So the installation of the signal at Henry and West Wash was identified as part of our annual traffic signal priority list that went to TC. That is basically a process by which we prioritize the installation of traffic signals based on public requests and so forth. So this location has been kind of on our radar for quite some time based on pedestrian crossings and some safety that were experienced there. And so that came up and was adopted in February of 2021. So this motion would basically be the funding of that installation that was determined to be necessary.
So then my next question about the funding part. So if it was already approved in 2021, why wasn't this already part of the 2022 budget? Why do we have to amend the budget for this?
So when that was adopted as an approved installation in February, one of our steps is to go through and see if we're able to assess adjacent properties for that, and basically just to see if we can assist with the funding of that installation through an assessment district. So it took some time to kind of go through that. It was determined that there, although it's a good policy, we determined in this case there would likely be some difficulty coming up with an assessment district that would accurately reflect kind of some of the responsibilities that would be associated with this installation financially, primarily because there's no new land uses, and the basis for the installation was based on public safety, based on crashes that were experienced there, and accommodating pedestrians a bit better. So.
Thank you. And the last questions. So there are 6 items on the list. Are you anticipating the same process to apply, that you will need more funding for this particular type of projects?
Well, so we would try to get the installations that were approved. We would try to get them done within the same calendar year, based on some of the funding issues that we've experienced, as well as some material delivery issues that we're also experiencing, because we're also part of the supply chain. I think one of the steps we may look to do is to defer these installations to the following year, instead of trying to get it done kind of on that previous timeline. So in the future, I would expect that it would be my hope anyway that we would be able to address that a little bit better through the capital budget process.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions on item 18? Alder Carter?
Thank you. Graham, I'm looking at the map that you provided, and this area has a lot of walking traffic, correct?
Our previous data collection indicated there was a fair number of pedestrians crossing through the intersection, yes.
And is there, am I at the wrong spot? Is there a parking ramp close by?
Yep, there's a couple of them. I think the Dane County Garage is probably one of the closest facilities.
Okay. And is there a 4-way stop there, or is it just no stop at all?
Currently, it's a 2-way stop. The stop controls traffic on Henry Street and West Wash Free flows.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any additional questions on item 18? If not, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. And we'll come to item 20, which is Legistar 69360, approval for Imagination Center at Rindle Park operating plan as outlined in 2022 capital budget amendment number 3. Can I get a motion on item 20, please?
Move approval for item 20.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Alder Furman, you had questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have a bunch of questions. I'm going to start with Director Schmidtke. Director Schmidtke, I know it's early, but do you have an estimate for what our operating budget deficit looks like in 2023 and obviously possibly 2024, since these costs will likely be incurred starting that year?
Alder Furman, it's always difficult to make projections precisely, but I will say that just to sort of remind the committee, those who were here and those who were not a part of the 2020 budget development, that budget was built with $8 million of one-time money from the city's general fund reserves. And I'm sorry, the 2021 budget. And then the 2022 2022 budget is balanced using a combination of government services funding that's been allocated from the ARPA, state and local fiscal relief funds, and as well as from the surplus and tax increment District 25, which has been closed. So $13 million of one-time money to balance the 2022 budget. So obviously those monies are not there when we look at 2023. However, we do expect probably around $10 million of that government services, ARPA funding, and TID 25 surplus to still be available to assist with balancing the 2023 budget. I will then add that we have a persistent structural deficit, meaning that our ongoing costs exceed our ongoing revenues, usually by about $10 million per year. That's driven primarily by personnel costs. And then I will add to that context that the council recently, I think this past fall, adopted a pay plan, a wage equity plan for general municipal employees, which will add about $1.3 million of general library fund costs in 2023 and another $2.5 million in 2024. So I think just given that whole backdrop, we're probably looking at a gap for the 2023 budget, assuming that those remaining ARPA and TID 25 funds are applied, of probably on the order of 10 to 15 million. And that does assume, recovery of net new construction, which is the primary factor in the levy limit availability for the budget, as well as continued recovery in room taxes that accrue ultimately to the general fund. And then given that one-time funding it will probably be exhausted in the 2023 budget, we're probably looking at a larger deficit going into 2024. Could be upwards of 15 to 20 million. Again, these are very rough numbers. They're heavily influenced by what happens with revenues, as I mentioned, net new construction, and the levy limit, and so on. So I hope that gives you at least a little bit of a picture.
That is scary, but certainly gives me the picture of our continued structural deficit. I appreciate the details there. Mayor, I have some questions for Director Mickles. Director, thank you for putting together this draft operating plan. I'd like a little bit of background of what went into this effort. Obviously, we've been talking about this project for many years now, and trying to figure out this operating plan that's finally in front of us. So I just want to get kind of a review of how we got here. Start there.
Okay, very good. First of all, just for your information, it's pronounced Michaels instead of Mickles. Thanks. Just to help you out there. A lot of people do it, though. I'll deferment. We collectively brought together the staffs of the library, the parks, and information technology to develop this operating cost plan. What we really wanted to do was work with our financial analysts and put together what I hope you're seeking, which is a very comprehensive operating cost plan. We didn't cut any corners. The plan that you're looking at represents an operating plan that would effectively provide park, city IT, and library services to this part of town. And although you've already tried to look into the crystal ball, any consideration of actual operating budget would not be until 2024. That would only be partial because at best we could bring it online maybe mid or late 2024, and deployment of the operating budget for the facility would only be fully realized into 2025. What we looked at was the staffing needs from each agency. What we're able to achieve within this plan is some shared staffing, particularly between library and parks. And there's a continual sharing of costs between the park pavilion and the library as far as utilities go, debt service, etc. I do have staff here as well. Chrissy Wick helped develop and coordinate this plan. So if you require further details, she could respond to those.
Thank you. That's helpful. In the scenario that we, this gets built and it comes online and we don't have $1.7 million. And obviously, based on the financial note, it's likely going to be more just based on costs increasing, et cetera. It sounds like there is a scenario where we could have less services and spend less. I mean, is that half this? Is that a quarter of this?
That could depend. What we did was we modeled the budget after Goodman South, since it's a comparable size. When we readjusted and looked at this operating plan, we could reduce hours of operation at this location. Right now, we're still looking at a double shift for this particular location to best meet the needs of the community. So there's the possibility of that reduction right there if we reduce hours to this facility. It's something comparable that we were able to achieve, for example, for a library in your district. When we had to cut budget, we reduced hours at Ashman, which realized operating cost savings. There's also a couple elements in there because we tried to be as comprehensive as possible. For example, there's 4 security monitors. Now, right now, we only have security monitors at 2 of our locations. That's at Central and at Meadow Ridge Library. But, we wanted to try to anticipate any costs that might be involved with this project.
And then probably my last question, do you see, how much of this, operating costs do you expect to be able to take out of your existing budget? So, obviously, I know you continue to work towards efficiencies. How much down do you think you can get this come 2024, 2025 through different efficiencies, et cetera?
Well, again, I think there's potential for that. It kind of all depends on how our existing budget remains intact and what we might be able to draw within our existing budget. There are opportunities for that. We'll be conducting this year a comprehensive West Side study that might realize some cost savings there within our existing budget. It's difficult to say. It's the same as Director Smiteke was just sharing, where you're going to be in 24 and 25. But what we've also looked at, and not only is this co-location of city agencies to be more efficient and to realize some savings in that capacity, but we're also looking at providing access to outside agencies to this facility, which could potentially bring revenue to the project. We wanted to be very conservative in how we constructed our cost operating plan. But for example, we do have a nonprofit now that's asking for space within the facility that would bring some revenue. We're also reactivating and Director Knapp from Parks could address this. There'll be revenue realized from the Park Pavilion as well, the new Park Pavilion. So there's opportunities for generating revenue. there's opportunities for making some savings, and there's opportunities to realize some funds from the existing operating budget. So there's three sources that could impact the overall operating plan.
Thank you, Director. I appreciate that. Mayor, that's all from me. I do have some comments during discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there additional questions for staff on item 20? Alder Figueroa-Cole?
I would like to hear from Parks also on a little background from their standpoint of this project. Where do they sit on it? Either Christopher or Eric will be fine if we can get some background from them.
Superintendent Knapp?
Sure, certainly. And thank you for the question. As it relates background, I won't give you a bunch of background, but certainly what we have at Rheindal today is a shelter that is aging. Certainly has been on our list of potential replacements or rehabilitations for quite some time. It's a bunker type shelter design, concrete aggregate, very poorly designed. We've had kind of ongoing issues there for the decade plus I've been in parks as it relates to safety and security. It's not a heavily used shelter because it's not all that inviting. So our history with this project was the idea of a co-located facility made sense from a parks perspective, given what we know we hear a lot of, which people want more programming in parks, more activity centers in a park, and the library being co-located in that park space, we could potentially upgrade and improve the shelter experience for gathering in that area where there's not a lot of options without and bring in new programming without having a parks division driven programming expenditure, a significant one. We do think that Rheindal in total, the plan for the park is pretty solid as it's been planned, but around the shelter, we do think an update is going to happen one way or the other over the next decade, I believe. I mean, we're talking about the fully accessible playground coming with the Park Foundation project in the next couple of years to go next to the splash park. But the building itself is in poor condition. It certainly is in desperate. It desires a lot. Leaves a lot to be desired, and it's less utilized. In fact, I would also point out in the numbers. I believe our estimates on revenue generation are rooted in given experience, because we're trying to be conservative here. Given experience of the Rheindal shelter and kind of number of reservations, my expectation is that number would go up with a newer facility. But we think there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration and co-location here, where we can get new improved amenities in a park without with a little more efficiency in those resources. Obviously, there's a lot of prioritization that has to go into what resources can be given to it. But we think it's an efficient way from the park's perspective to get a new shelter facility in a park to meet the community needs.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Alder. Any additional questions? All right, seeing none, Dave, I'd just like you to orient us to this item a little bit. We talked about the details of it, but not the sort of what the action is here, right? Because this is coming out of a requirement in capital budget amendment number 3 for the 2022 capital budget. Can you just remind us of that context, please?
Certainly, Mayor. So amendment number 3 that was adopted by the Finance Committee to the executive capital budget for 2022, which was then incorporated into the adopted budget, is that any expenditure of capital funds in 2022 for the Rheindal Imagination Center project budget is contingent on the submission of an operating cost plan and council approval of that plan. So what you have before you today is that operating cost plan. In order for expenditures to occur in 2022 from the capital budget for this project, the council needs to approve that plan.
Thank you, Dave. Are there any questions on that process point? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Alder Furman?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank staff again for answering my questions. I think the vision for this library is fantastic. I appreciate the additional services that I'll provide parks, but my concerns from the beginning when I learned about this project has been whether or not we can afford to run it. At that time, when I originally saw this project many years ago in the budget, our operating costs were a lot lower than 1.7, and I know there was a whole scoping activity to try to get that better figured out, and appreciate the work that was put into that. $1.7 million, or even half that. If we did less services and got more revenue or whatever, it's a considerable amount of money that I don't see us affording with our structural budget deficits. If we approve this facility going forward, obviously we're going to be in a position to try to have to figure that out. But I also know there's a ton of competing priorities and a very, very large structural budget deficit that's not getting better anytime soon. I appreciate Finance's work and taking advantage of different ways to address that structural deficit over the last few years, but the pain is going to get bad. It's going to get really bad with our future budgets. And I would assume by 2024 and 2025, by the time this facility would be done being built and come online, we're going to have to reckon with some incredibly difficult decisions on staffing and services throughout the city. I think this just adds to that problem. And so I take no pleasure in saying that I will be voting against going forward with this. We just can't afford it. There are just way too many other things going on, and we need to continue to try to do a better job of unfortunately not saying yes to everything. There's going to be a lot of other very tough decisions in front of us. I think this is the first of many, so I take no pleasure in voting against this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Is there any further discussion? President Abbas, welcome.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I have some family matters to attend, but I was listening to the meeting, and this is a really important discussion, so I felt compelled to join in. And a couple of years ago, when Rindell Library Imagination Center came to the Common Council, former Alder, I'm just skipping the name.
Balde.
No, not Balde, like from District 6 before Brian Benford.
Rommel.
Yes, former Alder Rommel gave a really long, brief history. In fact, it was a pretty long history about what happened, how the city hired a consultant, how this location got picked. And that goes through whole the process, looking into equity, also looking into underserved communities, which communities need that connection. And that whole process was explained by Alder Rommel, like why this location was important and why there are connections. Me as an immigrant, I will also say that when I came to United States, I used New York Public Library for free printing, for also tools as economic development, using free internet for applying for jobs. So libraries are not nowadays a library just for books. They have multi-dimension services. And they are a tool of economic development. That particular area at Randall is very underserved. There are a lot of African immigrants, Latino immigrants, South Asian immigrants, and there are a lot of communities and kids live in those particular area on the east side, which can take an extreme benefit from it. Coming to the question about how tough this budget is, like last year budget we passed and we are going through structural budget deficit, and I totally agree. And I think so we as a council have to really think through this, how we could, our decision can help improving that budget and perhaps collaboratively working with the mayor office. But this particular project is before any ARPA money, before this COVID came. This is happening for years and years and years, and it's over 8 years or 7 years Please don't quote me on that. I think so. It's over those years, 8 or 9 years, something like that. And it is a mistake to kill this project because it will have devastating impact on a community. And at this stage, I understand we are tight on a budget, but I urge my colleague, this is a must-do project. And we have this type of project we cannot really put on a hold. Thanks.
Thank you, President Abbas. Is there further discussion on item 20? Seeing none, I'll anticipate a roll call. And so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of item 20, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, then I'll ask Director Schmidtke to call the roll.
Council President Abbas,
Aye.
Alder Carter,
A very loud yes.
Alder Verveer,
Aye.
Alder Furman,
No.
Alder Figueroa Cole,
It's a yes that I may regret, but at this moment, yes.
Alder Curry, Mayor, that's 5 ayes and 1 no.
5 ayes, item 20 passes. And that is our agenda for the day. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
Motion to second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adjourning? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening.